All right, well, you made it back after that last video. So I guess you're still here with us, and we can go ahead and talk about two-dimensional list. A two-dimensional list is a list that contains other lists as its elements, also known as a nested list. When we want to think of two-dimensional lists, we want to think of rows and columns, typically. It's useful for working with multiple sets of data. In previous sessions, we've talked about records. When we talk about records using list, oftentimes we're talking about two-dimensional list. To process data in a two-dimensional list, you need to use two indexes. Typically, we have to use nested loops to process two-dimensional list. So here's an example of a two-dimensional list. As you can see, we have columns and we have rows. And each row and column has an index. So Joe here is index 0, 0. As we have Kim, Sam, Sue, Kelly, and Chris all having their own set of indexes. So this is just taking our example here and showing the indexes. So scores for row 0, column 0 is 0, 0, and so forth and so on. We have scores 0, 1, 0, 2. So as you can see, the first list of indexes is always the row. Oop, that's an interesting one we have there. And then the second index is the columns. Now we talked way back at the beginning that we would discuss tuples. Now a tuple is an immutable sequence, so we can't change it once we create it. It's very similar to a list, and once it's created, as we've said, you can't change it. The difference here is instead of using square brackets, we use parentheses. So we have our variable name equals parentheses and the items with separated by a comma. Tuples support operations as lists. We can use subscript indexing to retrieve elements. We can use methods such as index, built-in functions as len, min, and max. We can slice them, and we can iterate over them using the n, the plus, and the replicator operators. Tuples do not support these methods. We cannot append to them, remove them, insert, reverse, or sort. And that's because tuples aren't changeable or they're immutable once we've created them. We often want to use tuples because the processing of a tuple is faster than processing lists. We always, as programmers, like it when we can make things safe. So tuples are safe. Once you create them, they can't be changed. Some operations, because they want to have safe data, will require the use of a tuple. You can only pass a tuple in, you cannot pass a list in. The list function can convert a tuple to a list, while the tuple function can convert a list to a tuple. This is very handy if you have a list and you need to send it to a function that will only allow you to send a tuple. You can convert that list to a tuple. So we've covered a bunch of things in these videos. We talked about lists and how we can repeat them using the repetition operator. We can also concatenate lists together using the concatenation operator. We talked about indexing and how that points to the different items in a list. We've talked about multiple techniques for processing a list, the ability to slice and copy a list. We also talked about these methods that are already built into our lists as functions. We rounded off the list conversation with two-dimensional list. And then finally, we talked about tuples and how they're immutable, and we talked about the differences between and advantages over list. Thank you for coming in and talking to us about Chapter 7. I hope to see you soon.